Welcome to the book of Deuteronomy. It's the fifth book of the Bible and the final book of Moses. It picks up where Numbers left off. We're still reading every verse from the World English Bible without skipping anything. We're throwing in a little explanation. If we do skip a word here or there, it's by accident. The World English Bible is not copyrighted, so we can incorporate the entire text from Genesis to Revelation without legal issues. As Yahweh was the overwhelming voice of Leviticus, Moses is the overwhelming voice of this book. The narrator speaks a little, Yahweh speaks very little. It's almost all Moses delivering his final words to Israel, but he does quote Yahweh a lot. He summarizes what's happened so far and sets two paths for the future. On one path, Israel will survive and thrive. On the other, they'll be thrust into living hell. Which will they choose? That's the question on Moses' mind. We pick up now with Deuteronomy 1, verse 1. These are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan in the wilderness, in the Arabah, over against Suf, between Paran, Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab. Comment. The locations Moses just mentioned are up for argument, but basically, Israel is camped in the valley of the Jordan River, on the east side of the river, just north of the Dead Sea. It says, these are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel. And that's the best short summary we can give of this book. It's Moses speaking to Israel. As he speaks to them, Yahweh will be speaking to you and me. Verse 2. It is 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Comment. Moses says this with a great sense of irony. Mount Horeb's the same or nearly the same place as Mount Sinai. They camped there for 11 months. And after Yahweh was done with them there, he set them on the move to the promised land. But as Moses just said in verse 2, it's ordinarily an 11-day trip from Sinai to Kadesh Barnea, which is at the southern edge of the Promised Land. But because Israel was stubborn and unbelieving, it's taken them not 11 days, but 40 years to be ready to enter the land. Verse 3, in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, Moses spoke to the children of Israel according to all that Yahweh had given him in commandment to them. Comment, to be exact, they left Egypt almost 40 years ago in the month of Abib, which is the first month of the year on the Hebrew calendar. It's now the 11th month of the 40th year. Another month or so will make 40 complete years since they left Egypt. Right now it's midwinter. Verse 4. After he had struck Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth at Edrei, beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses began to declare this law, saying, Comment, it says Moses began to declare this law in the land of Moab beyond the Jordan. Historically, it was the land of Moab, but Sihon took it from Moab, and Israel just took it from Sihon, so it's Israel's land right now, if they can keep it. Now as Moses begins to speak to Israel, he's going back in time 39 years to when they were at Horeb, which is Mount Sinai. Verse 6. Yahweh our God spoke to us in Horeb, saying, You have lived long enough at this mountain. Turn and take your journey and go to the hill country of the Amorites and to all the places near there, in the Arabah, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the south, by the seashore, in the land of the Canaanites, and in Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. Behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them and to their offspring after them. Comment. Yahweh told them 39 years ago to leave Mount Sinai and go up to the Promised Land. Verse 8, Yahweh set the land before them at that time, meaning he was ready for them to enter it way back then. Verse 9, I spoke to you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear you myself alone. Yahweh your God has multiplied you, and behold, you are today as the stars of the sky for multitude. Yahweh, the God of your fathers, make you 1,000 times as many as you are, and bless you as he has promised you. How can I myself alone bear your problems, your burdens, and your strife? Take wise men of understanding and well known according to your tribes, and I will make them heads over you. You answered me and said, The thing which you have spoken is good to do. So I took the heads of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains of thousands and captains of hundreds and captains of 50s and captains of 10s and officers according to your tribes. Comment, Moses is speaking to a group that doesn't necessarily remember Mount Sinai because many of them weren't born yet. The ones who do remember were just youngsters who maybe didn't appreciate it at the time what was going on. So you and I may actually be more familiar with this story than his original audience. He's trying desperately to instill in them the importance of events gone by. He's telling them how their system of leadership and government got started. Verse 16, I commanded your judges at that time, saying, hear cases between your brothers and judge righteously between a man and his brother and the foreigner who is living with him. You shall not show partiality in judgment. You shall hear the small and the great alike. You shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is God's. The case that is too hard for you, you shall bring to me, and I will hear it. Comment. Deuteronomy 10:7, Yahweh doesn't respect persons or take reward, meaning you can't bribe Yahweh. Our judges should be the same, showing no partiality and taking no bribes. Verse 18, I commanded you at that time all the things which you should do. Comment, in other words, I told your parents just like I'm telling you now. They didn't listen. I hope you will. Verse 19, we traveled from Horeb and went through all that great and terrible wilderness which you saw by the way to the hill country of the Amorites, as Yahweh our God commanded us, and we came to Kadesh Barnea. Comment, that's a memorable description of the wilderness, great and terrible. As Jeremiah 2:6 says, not only did no one live there, no one even passed through, except Israel. But they arrived at Kadesh Barnea at the edge of the Promised Land, which was an 11-day trip that took them about a year because of the various rebellious setbacks. And verse 20, I said to you, you have come to the hill country of the Amorites, which Yahweh our God gives to us. Behold, Yahweh your God has set the land before you. Go up, take possession, as Yahweh the God of your fathers has spoken to you. Don't be afraid, neither be dismayed. You came to me, every one of you, and said, let's send men before us that they may search the land for us and bring back to us word of the way by which we must go up and the cities to which we shall come. The thing pleased me well. I took 12 of your men, one for every tribe. They turned and went up into the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and spied it out. They took some of the fruit of the land with their hands and brought it down to us and brought us word again and said, it is a good land which Yahweh our God gives to us. Comment, the 10 unfaithful spies said it was indeed a good land that flowed with milk and honey, but they also said the people of the land were too strong for them. Verse 26, yet you wouldn't go up but rebelled against the commandment of Yahweh your God. Comment, the commandment was go in, but they wouldn't. Verse 27, you murmured in your tents and said, because Yahweh hated us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us. Where are we going up? Our brothers have made our heart melt, saying, the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and fortified up to the sky. Moreover, we have seen the sons of the Anakim there. Comment, the message of the Bible is that God loves us and intends good for us. The message of unbelief is always and forever that God hates us and sends catastrophe on us. Verse 29. Then I said to you, don't be terrified, don't be afraid of them. Yahweh your God who goes before you, he will fight for you according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes, and in the wilderness where you have seen how Yahweh your God bore you, as a man does bear his son, in all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet in this thing you didn't believe Yahweh your God, who went before you on the way to seek out a place for you to pitch your tents in fire by night, to show you by what way you should go, and in the cloud by day. Comment, when they refused to enter the land, Moses reminded them of what Yahweh had done so far. He delivered them from Egypt with the plagues, parted the Red Sea, gave them manna and water and quail up to their waist. He led them with a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. His glory appeared to them multiple times. He spoke to them at Sinai, but they didn't believe enough to enter the land. Verse 32, Yahweh heard the voice of your words and was angry and swore, saying, surely not one of these men of this evil generation shall see the good land which I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it. I will give the land that he has trodden on to him and to his children, because he has wholly followed Yahweh. Comment, Caleb, and of course Joshua was the other faithful spy, but Joshua almost goes without mentioning because he's so well known. The two of them will enter the land. The rest of that generation, Yahweh put to death in the desert during the past 38 years. Verse 37. Also, Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes. Comment. Moses says, Yahweh was angry with me because of you. What Yahweh actually said to Moses was, quote, because you didn't believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Numbers 20:12. So Yahweh was angry with Moses for Moses' sake, not for Israel's sake. But Israel did provoke him, and who are we to find fault with Moses? Moses recalls what Yahweh said to him at the time going on, saying, you shall not go in there. Joshua the son of Nun, who stands before you, shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. Moreover, your little ones, whom you said would be captured or killed, and your children, who today have no knowledge of good or evil, shall go in there. I will give it to them, and they shall possess it. Comment. Military responsibility started at age 20. The ones that age and up wouldn't take the land, but their children will enter. These are the same children whose disbelieving parents said they'll be taken captive. Also, verse 38, they're not so much going to conquer the land or do anything to earn it. Rather, Yahweh's telling them they will inherit the land. An inheritance is mostly a passive thing. It just comes to someone. Yahweh's handing it over to them. But sometimes there are some conditions on the inheritance. In this case, all they have to do is be faithful. Verse 40, but as for you, turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the way to the Red Sea. Comment. Yahweh says, since you won't enter the land, get away from it. Go back into the deep wilderness. But they wouldn't listen to that either, as we go to verse 41. Then you answered and said to me, we have sinned against Yahweh. We will go up and fight according to all that Yahweh our God commanded us. Every man of you put on his weapons of war and presumed to go up into the hill country. Comment. They presumed to go up. May Yahweh save us from our presumptions. Verse 42. Yahweh said to me, tell them, don't go up and fight, for I am not among you, lest you be struck before your enemies. So I spoke to you, and you didn't listen, but you rebelled against the commandment of Yahweh, and were presumptuous, and went up into the hill country. The Amorites who lived in that country came out against you and chased you as bees do, and beat you down in Seir, even to Hormah. You returned and wept before Yahweh, but Yahweh didn't listen to your voice, nor turn his ear to you. Comment. Yahweh didn't listen to them when they disobeyed and were defeated. What was he to do? He couldn't let the inmates run the asylum. Verse 46. So you stayed in Kadesh many days, according to the days that you remained. Comment. So that's the story, in case these youngsters didn't know it, of why they've been in the wilderness for so long. If we had a prophet like Moses to tell us our family history and our national history, and why we're in the positions we're in, it would be quite the eye-opener. So let's humble ourselves before God and be faithful. That's the chapter. Deuteronomy has 34 chapters. Scratch off one and come back for Deuteronomy 2. You can always find the link easily at landofhavilah.net. Next time for Deuteronomy 2.